Production of Kansas City Week in Review is made possible through the generous support of Dave and Jamie Cummings, Smithfield Foods, Haas and Wilkerson Insurance, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
This week, Brownback's last stand, and is the race to be the next Kansas governor now officially underway. Setbacks for Kansas City's upcoming infrastructure election. The new governor of Missouri upset over his media coverage. Meanwhile, Mayor Sly James complains he can't even get a meeting with the guy. Those stories and much more straight ahead. Welcome, everyone. I'm Nick Haynes. So much to talk about this week in this place we call home. We connect the dots for you on those stories with KCUR's Mr. Up-to-Date, Steve Kraske. From behind the microphone at KCMO Talk Radio, Mike Ferguson, the senior writer for the Call newspaper, Eric Wesson, and from the pages of your Kansas City Star, Dave Helling. Kansas Governor Sam Brownback lashes out at lawmakers this week as he vetoes a $1 billion tax bill that would have balanced the state's budget by increasing income taxes on single Kansans earning more than $15,000 a year and married couples earning more than $30,000 a year.
I am vetoing the largest tax increase in the history of the state of Kansas. I am doing this to protect the income of the people of the state of Kansas. There is a better way.
In a Twitter video, Brownback says he blocked the measure to protect working families. The Kansas House took no heed, overriding the governor, but an override effort in the Senate failed by 3 votes. A victory for Brownback?
Well, just to point out here that a couple of years ago, Nick, he signed the largest tax increase in state history, a sales tax bump that hit those same working families he's now wanting to protect. You know, Sam Brownback's legacy now sits hangs in the balance here in Topeka. 3 votes in the state Senate was all his tax cuts from 2012 survived by this week. Very, very narrow margin. He can certainly claim victory. His tax cuts live today. But boy, the signs out of Topeka are pretty clear here that the same conservative lawmakers, many of them, the new moderate lawmakers who have come in, very much are taking a very serious look at Sam Brownback's tax cuts. You've got to think that a lot of that's going to be going away.
What happens now, though, Dave Helling? Is it possible, as some lawmakers are suggesting, let's just send the same bill back to Governor Sam Brownback, and like the child who is told to eat your vegetables, and if you don't, well, you're going to sit at the table, I'm going to keep giving you those same vegetables. Can they do that, bringing the same bill to the governor?
Well, first of all, I don't like eating vegetables. I think people who know me know that, so let's just get that out on the table. It's possible they'll do a very similar bill and send it back. It seems unlikely that the governor and the leadership in either house can negotiate something that both will be comfortable with, so it may come down to that. It may take some time. There is a theory among some Democrats and some moderates, they ought to just walk away, let the governor sort of stew in his own juices. If he can't sign this bill, then let him cut $300 million out of the budget through the end of this fiscal year and $600 million from next year's budget and see how the people like it. My guess is, and it's only my guess, is that they're going to try again. They'll introduce and defeat the governor's own tax plan. They'll cobble something together. We're going to be here for a while, but what will eventually pass will resemble the bill that got vetoed this week.
In that little short video you saw, Mike Ferguson, the governor saying there is a better way. What is the better way, then?
Well, he hasn't said, but I think that if something's going to pass in Kansas, I don't know that he would be opposed to any tax increase, but it's going to have to be coupled with some kind of spending cuts to keep in with the mantra of reducing government. So I think that's the debate, and I think that's negotiations we'll see from this point on.
Well, he's put forward a plan. You know, his plan is to raise the so-called sin taxes, liquor and cigarettes. He wants to grab some one-time money by selling the proceeds of the state tobacco settlement from a few years ago. You know, that would bring in a one-time cash infusion that would get the state through its difficulties this year and maybe part of next, Nick. But lawmakers, at least so far, haven't taken much liking to that. And really what's playing out here is a great political drama, because this is Sam Brownback's legacy here. His signature tax cuts of 2012 and 2013 looks like they're going to be going away. It'd be akin to President Obama losing the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. It's that same kind of thing.
Just very quickly, first of all, the governor also wants to take money from the unclaimed property fund.
Correct.
Pay that back for the immediate problem. That's more one-time, kick the can down the road stuff. But we should pause, Nick, and note, for the record, that 2/3 of the Kansas House in Kansas approved a $1 billion income tax increase, 2/3, and almost 2/3 of the Senate. That's an astonishing thing. That is not a statement any of us around this table would have made even 2 or 3 years ago. That shows you how the ground has shifted under the governor's feet. And if he wants to get his footing, he'll have to recognize that fact.
Well, Sam Brownback still has the better part of 2 years left of his final term in office, but the race to be the next governor of Kansas has officially begun. Is the state ready for its first black governor? This week, former Wichita Mayor Carl Brewer, a Democrat, announces his campaign. Last week, Wichita Oil Company owner Wink Hartman, a Republican, announced his candidacy. It's more than 20 months until Election Day. Is there really a need to declare this early for these kinds of races, Eric?
Yes. You got to get the money. You have to establish your agenda, get your plan out, get your people out, garner support. So, yes, it's a good time to announce that you're running. Close some of those financial doors. I think a lot of people is doing, as we saw with Chris Koster. He closed the financial doors. He still lost, but it's a good thing to announce early. It deters a lot of other people from getting in the race as well.
This was the former Wichita Mayor Carl Brewer we saw in the video there. I mean, most of us have no clue who the mayor is of Wichita currently. I mean, what type of name recognition does that individual have? As an African-American also running for governor, what type of recognition would he have?
Well, he'd have a lot of work to do, Nick, for sure. But keep in mind that western Kansas does pick up sometimes Wichita's TV market. So Carl Brewer would have some name ID in significant parts of the state. But still, he'd have a long way to go up in our neck of the woods for sure. I got to tell you, it's early, but this is already a terrific race. You know, a couple of years ago, Dr. Helling and I were writing stories about the current Kansas congressional delegation, the 4 members, all 4 of whom were taking aim at being governor or a U.S. senator. All 4 were going to jump in. That's changing before our eyes, Nick. Lynn Jenkins no longer running for governor. Tim Huelskamp, the western Kansas congressman, defeated in last August primary. Mike Pompeo in Wichita is now the CIA director. The guy to watch, this is going to be interesting the next few months, is Kevin Yoder from our own 3rd district in Johnson County.
And he was on Ruckus this week, which you can see at 11:30, the rebroadcast of that program on Sunday morning. And he was asked specifically by Mike Shannon, hey, are you going to run for governor? Of course, and he says, oh, no, I've got all this work to do, Dave Helling.
No, I think Steve's right that Kevin Yoder's decision will say a lot about what will happen in Republican Party politics between now and 2018. But let's also note, for the record, that Carl Brewer's entrance in the race illustrates something very important about Democrats in Kansas, which is they ought to be able to take the governorship. Typically, after 2 terms of any party, the other party takes the office in Kansas. And yet the Democrats, name 3 Democrats who might run for governor in Kansas.
Well, they're talking about Paul Davis again.
Right, but they're also talking about Paul Davis running for the Kansas House in the 2nd district. If he makes that choice, then you've got nobody. I mean, I'm writing next week a little bit of a story on how the Republicans seem to be in such trouble, and yet the Democrats are in such disarray that they don't present candidates of their own. That means Carl Brewer isn't the long shot that you might think he would be 2 years out, because the Democrats don't really have a lot of alternatives.
Well, 2 things is the Republicans are going to spend between now and the real hot and heavy campaign season trying to make sure that the next election for governor is not a referendum on Sam Brownback. And I just want to selfishly say I hope that Wink does well enough that I can keep saying Wink Hartman on the radio.
Well, speaking of referendum, Steve Kraske, you write that there is another important election we should be paying attention to in Kansas, long before the one we've been talking about, and it's one that will have the eyes of the nation on it. The first referendum on Donald Trump's performance in office, you write, will come just over 6 weeks from now in a special election in Kansas, which will be the first congressional contest since the November election that brought the world president Donald Trump. This is the 4th congressional district seat in Kansas, centered around Wichita, which has been held by Mike Pompeo. He, you may recall, is now the CIA director. Current State Treasurer Ron Estes is the Republican candidate. Democrats picked civil rights attorney James Thompson. This is a district that has not been held by a Democrat in 22 years. It's considered solidly Republican. Is there really anything to suggest that the outcome on April 11th will be any different?
Well, let's be clear. This is a Republican seat, just as you pointed out, Nick. The Democrats, it would take a Herculean upset to win this seat. Having said that, Democrats in Washington have indicated to me in the last few days they see a chance here. They want to embarrass Donald Trump in a Republican-leaning district. They think the 4th District of Kansas might be the place they can do that.
Eric.
And I've heard the same thing coming from people out of D.C. that if they're vulnerable, now's the time to do it and they're basing it on these town hall meetings and how outraged people are at these town hall meetings.
I didn't think there were any town hall meetings.
They've had some.
Okay.
You know, they're trying to get Yoder. I saw one soundbite that had his picture there with a sign that he didn't show up. But they are, they think now is the time to make the move to get some of those seats back.
But outrage is one thing. Raucous town halls are one thing. But winning races requires organization, good candidates, lots of money, a good theory. The Democrats seem to lack that in Kansas and in Missouri. So that it'll be a good test to see whether they understand that part of the equation.
Just quickly, Nick, the hope here is that this is a special election, not a November or an August election. These special elections tend to really attract the most intense activists, and that's what Democrats are putting their hopes on here.
On the other side of state line is the race to be the next mayor of Kansas City heating up. That election is 2 years away, but an interesting press release this week from Kansas City Councilman Scott Taylor declaring that he leads in the latest campaign fundraising totals. His campaign report shows a total of $330,000 in cash on hand. And as a public service, he lists the total for other members of the city council. The closest to him is Kevin McManus, with former Jackson County Executive Catherine Shields with a more modest pot of money. Does this make Scott Taylor the man to beat, or does nobody care about how much cash you have in a race for mayor so far from Election Day, Eric?
It's a pretty intimidating. If you're other people on that list and you were thinking about it, he's got a pretty good jump on you as far as money. And I think that was one of the things that Sly did when he ran. He had so much money it intimidated other people. I think people will look more at what he's done in the 8 years that he's been sitting there, more so as to how much money he's got. But you've got quite a few people rumored on that council to be running for mayor. And
I don't think people are talking or thinking about the mayoral election. I think Sly James has possibly the ability to pick the next mayor, his successor, with as popular as he is. People are more focused on the $800 million bond election coming up right now.
Well, let's talk about that then, Mike. The African-American political club Freedom Inc. has voted to oppose Kansas City's upcoming $800 million infrastructure election. The group took a position against each of the 3 questions on the April 4th ballot. What difference does this nay vote make, Steve Kraske?
Well, I think it does matter, Nick. Again, as we've talked on this show before, you need an extraordinary majority to pass these 3 bond issues. 57% is what's needed here. And when you have groups like Freedom peeling off, it's certainly not decisive, but it doesn't help. This kind of bond issue, you need all the momentum you can, the goodwill, good feelings, and Freedom saying no here is going to push this effort back a little bit.
Eric.
And I agree. It's not the end all, but it makes you raise your eyebrow to wonder, because it's a very heavy lift regardless of what you think about it. You've got roads need repair, so you might have people to vote for the roads, but they might not vote for the water control system, or they might not vote for the animal shelter. And the animal shelter is probably the most vulnerable of all of these, because people are like, in the black community, it's like, okay, we're going to spend $14 million on cats and dogs, but we got homeless people setting buildings on fire on 18th Street trying to stay warm. And then you've got the flood control issue that Congressman Cleaver helped get funding for. So you got Freedom that votes against that, and Cleaver is a part of Freedom to a great degree. So it's a very interesting outcome that's going to be coming up with this election.
Well, Freedom's decision came in the same week as a KCPT News investigation revealed that a third of Kansas City's water supply was going missing. According to a report from Mike McGraw for Flatland, KCPT's digital magazine, Kansas City can't account for a third of the $28 billion gallons of treated water it pumps through its system. That's enough water to fill nearly 14,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. According to experts contacted by Flatland, that lost water adds up to about $24 million a year, or $133 per customer a year. The Water Department officials argue the price tag is closer to half that. But how much of this infrastructure election has to actually do with water?
No,
Dave?
a lot. Most of the water repairs would be paid for through water bills. The infrastructure stuff they're talking about are bridges, streets, flood control, as opposed to repairing leaky water pipes. That's on water users, who, by the way, are struggling enormously with water bills that go up.
So even if you voted for every single one of these questions, this wouldn't necessarily work towards this issue.
Let me also suggest that the politics of the $800 million bond are once again entangled in the 1/8 of a cent sales tax, which will also be on the ballot. You can bet Freedom will endorse that tax, whether or not the East Side community, or has endorsed it, whether or not the East Side community can count on the support of other parts of Kansas City to pass that sales tax becomes even more problematic now. It's a mess. It's a real mess.
Eric.
And the 1/8 of a cent put black organizations and even black newspapers in a bad position, because you can't say, well, hey, you can't vote against it because it's progress for the community, even though some parts of the $800 million bond you can't say no to, because we have people calling us saying they need sidewalks and curbs. We have people calling us saying they need abandoned houses torn down, but that money can be used for that, for the bond. But that 1/8 of a cent sales tax, that's people are against it because, one, they went out and got signatures with no plan and no money, and it put everybody in an awkward position because you have to support it.
And it's a sales tax, which
and
is
it's a sales tax, and it's got to get people from north, south, and west of Kansas City to vote for it.
Very scrambled.
I thought I'd go back and actually answer his question. It had to do with water pipes and point out that some of the water pipes in this town, as has been written many times, date back to the Civil War, particularly the ones in the downtown area, the River Market. The city has borrowed a whole bunch of millions of dollars in recent years to begin patching up a lot of those pipes, but that work is still continuing.
Yeah, by the way, reporters like leaks. So just so you know.
All right. Well, the new governor of Missouri isn't happy. Eric Greitens is upset about the media coverage he's getting.
The local media slams newly elected Governor Eric Greitens for his ties to the Trump administration. One headline reading this: The Apprentice. In Eric Greitens, Missouri has Trump and a Trump problem of its own. Really? Are you a problem, Governor?
Well, Brian, I am a problem to the special interests. I'm a problem to the insiders. I'm a problem to the lobbyists. And the problem is that I've come as a conservative, as an outsider, as a Navy SEAL. And what's shocked all of the insiders is that we're doing exactly what we said we're going to do.
Mike, is he getting a bum rap? Is he doing exactly what he said he was going to do?
It's his own fault. He has turned down interviews and long-form discussions with just about every media outlet that reaches a statewide audience, including the largest radio networks and including the television show that reaches most of the state, which I can say with a little bit of pride is Missouri Viewpoints. He's turned that down for a year and a half. He is, to complain about getting a bum rap and not like the coverage that he's getting, ridiculous. It's his own fault.
No, he must be doing something right, though, Steve.
Well, he on KCUR?
He is. No, he's not been on KCUR. He's been invited. Governor, if you're listening, come on sometime. We'll have a chat on Up to Date. But no, Mike is exactly right. He's saying no to everybody. But, he's getting out around the state. He's getting himself introduced. He's proposed a budget that's gotten, fairly strong reception from a lot of lawmakers. These new governors, Nick, need a little time to get their feet in the ground. But Mike is right. Saying no to the media day after day is not going to engender any good vibes with reporters anymore.
Eric, Kansas City Mayor Sly James is complaining about the new governor, too. He's ticked he can't get a meeting with him. In fact, James is so frustrated he asked a packed meeting of Missouri mayors. Has anyone actually spoken to the governor? Rather than an amen, several mayors said that Greitens has been accessible and responsive. So is it something that Mayor James said, or is he simply asking too much of a governor who's only been in office just a few weeks?
He's not a politician, so I don't think he knows how to finesse the media and do some of the things that we're used to governors doing because they've been politicians and they know how this thing works. But I did see that he sent out a press release that he had the vice president there and they were cleaning up Jewish graves in St. Louis. And I didn't see it in any of the media, but he sent out a press release doing it. So somewhere along the line, his communications director needs to kind of reach out and be on KCUR and be on these other stations.
A couple quick things. First of all, Governor Greitens, like President Trump, is pursuing sort of government by photo op, largely.
Yeah,
like in St. Louis and these events, and he does push-ups with the police and other things like that. That eventually will have to come to an end because the public will tire of it. But like President Trump, Eric Greitens is also critical of the media, but obsessed with it. And we know that because this week the state of Missouri got a $50 million tobacco settlement payment, and he decided to recommend spending it in two places: treatment for the disabled and in-home care, and then bus transportation for K through 12. Those were the two things he was getting hammered on in the mainstream press for cutting out of the budget. So his first chance, he's sort of trying to satisfy the criticism that he undoubtedly reads in the mainstream press, and yet tries to ignore it. That's just a recipe for disaster after a time.
What about the criticism of the Mayor Sly James, though, that he can't get a meeting even with?
Well, that may be a little bit overblown. I mean, I think there is some frustration from the mayor's office that he can't meet with the governor, but his time is eaten up early on. The real question isn't a meeting. The question is whether the governor is cognizant of problems facing urban America and whether he wants to address them. And that jury is out, in part because Kansas City and St. Louis voted for his opponent in overwhelming numbers.
And when it comes to the mayor, is this a question of style? Last week, the headlines were of the mayor having a spat with the police chief, Darrell Forte, over crime numbers and the number of officers on the streets.
The question was very simple. It wasn't accusatory, wasn't blaming anybody. It was a very simple question. What strategies are we having in order to address this problem?
I understand his frustration, but I'm frustrated also, and you have to give me some more resources if he wants to do some things.
Now, we in the media actually do love a little bit of conflict. We love to show that part, but is that being overplayed, Eric?
Not really. There is a little tension. Both individuals, Forte knows police. He knows policing. You have the mayor who's very outspoken about a number of issues, and I think that collision has taken place before. I think this is the first time it got picked up on a camera.
Nick, there should be some tension in this community over the crime rate, and the fact that the police chief and the mayor are locking arms here over a couple of issues is just fine. The homicide rate is up. Aggravated assaults have been up in recent years, and this community has got to continue to wrestle with that and figure out new paths forward. We've been innovative. We've tried a lot of different things in recent years with apparently some mixed results, but this conversation and dialogue and this tension has got to continue.
Mike, it is a complex, it is a crucial issue and discussion, and the conversations should be uncomfortable from time to time if we're really serious about solving it. I don't really have a problem with the headbutting that happened in that. I would rather see that than people trying to smooth things over for the benefit of the media and photo op.
Kansas City will spend... Go ahead, I'm sorry, Eric.
One of the issues that Forte has are abandoned buildings and trash. He thinks that those abandoned buildings, he gets a lot of calls from people in neighborhoods that have these vacant buildings. So why isn't the city tearing some of these buildings down and make the neighborhood safer? So they've got different approaches to deal with the same issue.
Kansas City will spend $250 million this year on its police force. Think about that, $250 million. 44% of the general fund goes to police. That's double what's required under state law. For the chief to suggest that resources are the significant problem in the police department probably overstates the situation. The mayor's right when he says there are other needs in the community. As we wrote in an editorial this week, Nick, one of the problems is the local control of the police, and this kind of tension is almost inevitable.
This week we marked President's Day. It's never been one of the nation's top holidays, but it was a day to remember for a slew of local news headlines that had little to do with celebration.
Hundreds gathered just off the plaza for a Not Our President's rally. A Columbia, Missouri man is arrested, accused of plotting a President's Day jihadist terrorist attack on Union Station. And it's on President's Day that widespread damage is discovered at Missouri's largest Jewish cemetery as vandals topple more than 100 headstones at the graveyard in suburban St. Louis in what becomes not just a national, but an international news story. Now, Missouri Governor Eric Greitens is quick to move on that story. As the state's first Jewish governor, he joined the cleanup at the cemetery and coaxed Vice President Mike Pence to join him in picking up a rake. Political leaders are often judged on how they respond to unexpected circumstances at a time when people are looking for reasons to pounce on every perceived political misstep. Was this a moment of authentic leadership from the new governor?
Well, I do think it was, to some degree, a photo op, but I don't think all photo ops are bad. And I think this one was a good response. I think it was a good message. I thought the vice president gave very appropriate remarks on this. And Governor Greitens, not referencing his own religious affiliation a whole lot, I thought that it was a unifying. And I'm critical of the governor when I disagree. I think he got this one right with the vice president.
Steve?
I agree. I'm not sure what to add to that. I think it was an appropriate thing, and Governor Greitens hasn't made a big deal of his Jewish heritage, but this was a good event.
You know, we had this incident in Olathe, Nick, over the last couple of days on this that appears to be a hate crime playing into this, and I do think there's some need for political leaders to step forward and find a way to cool the rhetoric a bit.
But, okay, you mentioned that because I mentioned the headline about the plot to blow up buses and trains at Union Station by an ISIS sympathizer. The implications of that story, of course, are huge, particularly as it was revealed that planned attack was supposed to be bigger than that of the Boston Marathon. But the coverage was scant in contrast to the shooting that you referenced there in Olathe. Why the disproportionate nature of that coverage, Mike?
I'm concerned that we don't take that kind of thing seriously enough. Was he actually really a threat? No, because it looks like the FBI had a handle on it from the beginning because he was dealing with undercover agents. But it does show that there are people within our states, I'm sure on both sides of the state line, willing to enact this kind of violence and willing to enact these kinds of attacks. They're out there. This one just happened to get caught.
Yes.
It might have deserved more attention, Nick, but whenever you prevent something from happening, as President Obama discovered with preventing an economic catastrophe when he first took office, you never get as much credit because something has been prevented. You don't see what it might have been, and that was the issue.
Is that the difference, Dave?
Well, I think that's part of it, and part of it is the shootings in Olathe, which sort of suck a little bit of the oxygen out of the coverage of this story involving an alleged threat, plus things happening nationwide, plus the incident in the Jewish cemetery over near St. Louis. So, you know, coverage decisions also always get a little bit jumbled depending on what else happens. But there is a common theme, isn't there? And that is that the rhetoric in this country continues to encourage acting out in a way that I think most of us find unacceptable, and someone has to get a hold of that, it seems to me.
And that is our Week in Review. Our thanks to our news reviewers. I'm Nick Haynes from all of us at KCPT. Thanks for spending part of your weekend with us.